And we are live.
All right. Hey there.
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, all things considered. I think we all got to put that caveat on that answer anytime in life these days.
Yeah, what a time to be alive. So, we're new, obviously. We're starting this podcast. And I think the number one question people are going to ask is, why are we doing this? Sri, why do you want to do this podcast? And maybe also give us a little bit of introduction on what we're going to be talking about as well.
Sure. So some of you may know me from my political campaign. And a lot of people have asked me to do a podcast, give my hot takes on things. But I wanted to do something that's not going to be somebody destroys Ben Shapiro or someone is getting owned or the kind of normal just rage baiting stuff online. I really want to do something in the vein of seeking a better future, something more optimistic like our campaign was. And so when we talk about news of the day, I don't want it to just be kind of partisan political takes. We can talk about politics, obviously, but I also want to talk about, policy and not just domestic policy. I spent more than 14 years in foreign policy all over the world, but just that things that affect people's life, reaction to news of the day, and making sense of all that. The second thing that I wanted to do, even before this year, I've spent a lot of time thinking about spirituality, philosophy, epistemology, ethics, and things, and how to be a better person. Right, but this year, it's come into real focus for me because my brother, unfortunately, had a heart attack in April and passed away this year. And so I've been reeling and searching for meaning myself. And I think a lot of us have been, especially since the pandemic. It's just very clear across our society, people are looking for meaning. And I want to talk a little bit about that, what's important in life beyond the news of the day. And then lastly, I want to talk about fun things. I mean, there's just so much, there is fun stuff out there to talk about. This is unfortunately the last week of basketball season, but I could talk about basketball every single day. So maybe next year we'll do a whole stream just on basketball. But I do want to talk about the NBA Finals a little bit. But I also want to talk about fun things, summer movies coming up. I want to talk about just fun things in science, and not just the bleak stuff about AI that we're all worried about. But I'm always looking up interesting scientific things about space and time and physics and the nature of our world around us. And I just think science is a fun topic, but literally anything fun that could uplift us as well, just learning for learning's sake, that would be cool too.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so I'm so glad you brought up all of these things because everything you just mentioned kind of sort of affects our lives every day, right? Whether it is policy, whether it's basketball, quite frankly, because right now, I mean, that's what everybody's talking about. And we see with FIFA coming up, for example, how cities are preparing for FIFA, how that's affecting policies in cities at the city level. And so even though they may not seem like something that affects your daily life, every major event actually kind of does. So I think it's going to be a fun podcast. I think we're going to have a great time here talking about a little bit of everything. For those that don't know me, my name is Jazz. I met Shri actually on his campaign. He was running in my district, and I got to meet him as a supporter. The first time I met him, it was kind of funny. It was at the masjid. It was Maryam Masjid. And I met his opponent right before her. And she gives me her little push card, tells me all about her, how she's Muslim and yada yada. And then I meet Shri, and I'm like, oh, this guy has a resume on his push card. Oh, and then I read everything like, you were with the State Department, you were with X, Y, and Z, you did all these things. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Because my dad had your opponent sign in our yard initially. And it was after that
I don't
day.
know if you ever told me that.
Oh, yeah, he did. It was actually somebody from our neighborhood who just put it in our yard, and my dad kind of was like, fine, whatever. And, that day I actually ripped that sign out and put yours in. And, after that, we just became best friends over time. And we started doing a lot of work. We did a lot of good work for the country. And we'll talk about that more as we go on, at some point in this podcast. Not this podcast, maybe, but in one of our future episodes. But yeah, Bashir and I just became really good friends, and now we're gonna do a podcast together because it's exactly what guys in their 30s and 40s do. We start a podcast when we're bored, right? So just another beautiful podcast, and let's see how this rolls.
And I guess one other thing I want to say that we share in common is this struggle with identity. I think whether people like to use the word identity or not, every one of us has multiple identities. Identity as an American, as an identity as your gender, identity as your faith, your ethnic background. And for both of us being children of immigrants, especially in this time where immigration, but also just kind of hatred towards immigrants and attitudes towards immigrants is such a big deal. I think we definitely have a unique perspective as children of immigrants from different faith backgrounds, by the way,
very different,
but both growing up in the same hometown in the great state of Texas, and what kind of lens that gives us on America as we approach our 250th. So,
it's 250 this year, isn't it?
Yeah. So time flies, doesn't it? It does.
What a time, man. Oh, okay. So I guess we should start off with politics, since I kind of mentioned that, how we kind of met. You ran for Congress, man. What have you been up to since?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, before I ran for Congress, I was already like somewhat cynical. I think most of us are pretty cynical about politics, but I'm probably even more cynical about politics itself today than I used to be. And the reason is that from getting an insider's perspective, I feel like the whole political industry is very divorced from democracy. And that's the thing that I really cared about when I got into this. And so, we were talking about America's 250th birthday coming up. And, there's all these polls out there saying like, oh, are you proud of, 250th? Are you going to participate? And I'll see, conservative sites posting, well, Democrats are not proud to be Americans, or liberals and progressives, their pride in America has gone down. Right. And I take a lot of issue with that, because it depends on the way you phrase the question, because I think being afraid for our country, being concerned, being worried. I mean, if I had pride in my family and I'm afraid for my family, or if I'm concerned, I'm worried about the safety of my family, that doesn't make me less proud. I think it makes me really invested in my family. It means that I really love my family, and I really do love my country. But I think that there's certain ideals that it is based around. So when we come up to the 250th, and given the leadership we have in this country, given what's going on with regard to our elections, what's going on with regard to rule of law, what's going on with regard to our rights, our basic rights right now, and even safety, right? Just being safe from your own government. I am really scared for our country, and I thought as a kid, maybe this is a little bit too idealistic, but I thought, if you take in slices every 5 years, every 10 years, every 20 years, we are making progress. We go from slavery to, abolition, to women's suffrage, to civil rights, to gay rights. All of these different things seem like, we are generally trending forwards. And I am really scared. Over the last 10 years in particular, I think the trend has been somewhat downward. And so that's what scares me right now. Because I love my country so much, I am scared as we approach our 250th. Are we really holding together? And especially, are we holding together around the principles, I think, that make us a country? I mean, what do you think, Jazz?
So it's interesting you say, like, we are proud of America. And I think a lot of people miss that point, because yes, I complain about the issues America is having, right? Whether it's foreign policy, whether it's what's happening here in Texas, whether, where you are in DC.
Yeah.
I complain, but that doesn't mean I'm not proud of America and that I'm not proud to be an American. It means that, we care. We care enough to start bringing up these conversations and trying to make an impact. We do our best with what we can. God knows if it's going to be, fruitful or worth it. Who knows? But what we do know is we have to try. Because if we don't have hope, I think that's how we truly lose ourselves and the soul of this country. We have to do what we can to save America from what we believe is, the path we're going down.
Well, I mean, if you care about your family, you try to save it from danger, right? You try to do those things to protect it. And you know, I've heard people say at different times, and I've probably felt it too. Maybe at really low points, like after January 6th or after the Charlottesville Nazi rally, after Minnesota this year, right?
God, yeah.
People say, I'm moving out of the country, and I know some people who have already moved out of the country to other places. But for me, every time I even think about that, I think, where would I move to? What other place do I have? And especially, it's an interesting question, because for some immigrants, they might have an answer. They might say, you know what, I'll just move back home, right? I'll move back to India. I'll move back to Pakistan, to China, to El Salvador, to Mexico, to
wherever, yeah.
Wherever you originally came from before you became an American. But for you and me, we've been Americans our whole lives. People would sometimes ask me, in Texas, do you feel more Indian or more American? And it seemed like it was a really strange question, because I don't know if anybody ever asked, some of my other friends, do you feel more Swedish or more American? Do you feel more German or more American because your ancestors came from there, right? Yeah. I mean, my father came more recently than some of their ancestors, sure, but and okay, also on my mom's side.
Your mom's side. Yeah, I was going to say your mom's side. Like
there is a big but there. On my mom's side, my ancestors came here in the 1600s. So it depends on, how you do the math there. Do you average it halfway between or not? But more broadly than that, when people ask me that question, it was kind of incomprehensible to me, because, I have a lot of Indian culture in me. I have all of my dad and my family in me. And there's so much to be admired there, so much to be proud of, so much to explore. But I have lived in America most of my life. I've served America. I was born in America. English is my native language. Everything about me, if not America, I don't have another country. And so for anybody who feels that in their bones that they are American, which I think is probably the majority of the country, you should want to preserve that. You should care about the country. And there's sometimes when I think you should be worried, although sometimes we worry about different things, and maybe we have different ideas of what America is. So that's something that I think we can explore in more detail going forward. One specific thing I did want to talk about, though, was, America's founding. The thing that we usually cite as unique about this country is that we were the longest lasting, large democracy, right? There had been some city-state democracies and other things, but at the time America was founded, most of the major nations were, well, a lot of them weren't even nations, they were empires, right?
They were monarchies,
yeah, but they were all like monarchies or emperors or, sultans or something like that. The idea that you could vote out your leader if you didn't like them, that was kind of different on the world stage for a country. Yeah, it was revolutionary, right? For a country of, I think, about 4 million people at the time, to be able to at least vote on your leaders, that was a big deal. So I think democracy for me holds us together, but so does rule of law, right? I mean, that was a big problem too, is that we didn't have rule of law here in the United States for us compared to the Brits who could make decisions over there for us. And so when we violate rule of law right now, I think we're violating what it means to be an American. Having said that, this idea of originalism, just going back to, okay, what did the founding fathers think of everything? Well, if you use that as your basis for democracy, then you come to some pretty strange results, because our founding fathers did not believe that you and me should have the right to vote. They didn't believe that our mothers and our sisters should have the right to vote. They didn't even believe that. Some did. That's true. I don't want to blanket generalize, but the democracy that we ended up with in 1789, right? Yeah. It did not provide for participation in that democracy by everyone, right? And we have changed that democracy over time. My worry is right now that some of the new things being proposed, whether through executive orders, through laws, or especially the Supreme Court. I mean, there's been some massive decisions this year from the Supreme Court that have, for example, gutted the last leg of the Voting Rights Act, which is the biggest piece of civil rights legislation in our history. And it is turning the clock back there. It is basically saying that we don't all have the right to participate in that democracy. And to be very specific, their vision of who gets to decide, who votes for what, what your lines are, how you can participate in democracy. Well, that's up to the states. Well, what were the states back in 1790? The states were a small group of extremely wealthy white landowners, right? Whoever the state legislators were who controlled that colony in that state. And if you apply that principle today, the people who are state legislators, whatever positions they've been in since as long as they've been in office, and especially based on their party, if they are deciding the lines, they are choosing the voters. The voters are not choosing them. That essential principle that you get to vote out people when they're bad leaders, it doesn't work, right? And especially if we all participate, if you and me and our mothers and our sisters and people of all ethnicities, people who are immigrants here but naturalized citizens, if they can't all participate equally, then I don't think we have a democracy, whether or not it would have counted as democracy in 1790 or not. I don't think that Tennessee has a democracy right now. If you see the lines that they just drew, they're these thin strips across the state so that you could be living in a house in Memphis, which is a majority black city, and I could be living in a house in the suburbs of Nashville, hundreds of miles away, and somehow someone is being elected to represent that community. That's not a community. That's just politicians picking their voters. And especially what it's doing in the South is it's eliminating a lot of black representatives because their districts are being sliced up. And so we will have less black representation in 2026, specifically because of a Supreme Court decision. So I think that is scary for American democracy.
And that's a fact. Like, here where I am in Houston now, right? Al Green just lost his seat, the seat he was gerrymandered into. He lost his seat when the maps went into effect because he was in District 9, and they just completely moved that to the far east side of the city as opposed to the southwest side. Republicans won here. And I know some people are always going to pick the fight like, oh, well, we need young leaders. That's why, we need Menifee. And Menifee's a good guy, don't get me wrong. I personally do like him. I'm not a district, I'm not a voter, but, I'm just giving my commentary here. But the reality is, Republicans are the real reason Al Green is no longer there. They took away a fighter and a champion. And back to what you were saying about
can I say something about that for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
So, I mean, you're talking about the primary elections, right? And one result of all this gerrymandering. I mean, we've always had gerrymandering, and it's gotten worse. And we could talk about the history of gerrymandering. I mean, Thomas Jefferson basically helped usher in the era of gerrymandering. But we've gotten to the point where 92% of all elections in 2024 in November, all congressional elections, didn't matter in November. They were already decided in the primary. That was just
right. They're not competitive, right? They're gerrymandered to the extreme.
Exactly. And so this year, it's looking like it may be somewhere between 97 to 98% of all seats are decided before we get to November. And what happened in Houston, and what happened in Dallas, by the way, and it's happened in lots of places. It's happened in Georgia before. What happened? It's not even a contest between Christian Menifee and Al Green. I know them both. I like them both. Actually, I'm friends with Christian. I found out recently that his wife and my brother went to school together.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But it's that contest isn't the real issue. The real issue is that there were two districts. So in January of this year, we had two black members of Congress in the Houston area, and by March, only one could be a member because they had smashed those districts together and cut out representation. That's what it's about, cutting out representation. In Dallas, the same thing happened. Smashed two districts together, and this issue of whether it's partisan or whether it's racial, I think it's kind of a red herring because them saying, oh, it's just partisan, and a byproduct of being partisan is that minorities, people of color, I shouldn't even say minorities because we're going to a majority minority country, but people of color just get eliminated as a byproduct. So sorry, I didn't mean to kill you. My bomb just landed near your head. That's it. Sorry about that.
Yeah, right. It's collateral damage. No.
Yeah, this isn't that is not an answer to the question of why they're eliminating black members of Congress all across the South, 60 years on after the Voting Rights Act. I mean, the real people who need to answer are why is the Supreme Court now overturning precedent over the last 10 years and gutting it's completely gutted the most important piece of civil rights legislation we ever had. That's why I fear that we are going backwards.
We are. And speaking of Supreme Court and going back to, say, the Constitution, right?
Yeah.
We had the Supreme Court established as a check, right? They have lifetime appointments there for a reason, so they don't have to worry about, being reelected and people being mad at them, that they could rule in what's in the best interest of America. I think part of the genius of the Constitution is that it's incomplete and that it was designed to change. Because yes, while the founding fathers were wealthy, white, land-owning individuals, right? I believe enough of them foresaw that the country is going to change, and that over time, as we change, our rules and laws need to change. And so, for example, you and me voting, right? We didn't have that right back in the 1700s if we would have been alive there.
I mean, if we actually go back 100 years ago, you and me, or our parents, I guess, would not have had the right to become U.S. citizens. It was illegal for non-white people to become U.S. citizens 100 years ago.
Is that true? 100 years ago?
Yeah. So from about, you have to fact check me on this, but I think from 1917 to about 1947, about 30 years or so, there was a famous Supreme Court case where a Sikh, he had become a U.S. citizen, but because they had changed the immigration laws, they tried to denaturalize him, and he took it all the way to the Supreme Court. Ironically, his argument wasn't at the Supreme Court wasn't that this is racial discrimination and you shouldn't have these laws. His argument was that he was really white because he was an upper caste Indian. and because he was Aryan blood, right? And the Supreme Court said, no, what we really mean by Caucasian is just white. It's white. Sorry, buddy. You're not white.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it took about 30 years to reverse that. But even once they reversed that, we didn't really see large numbers of people from people of color immigrating to the United States until the Immigration and Naturalization Act. In same time as the Civil Rights Act, actually, same time as the Voting Rights Act, which a lot of immigrants probably don't even realize they're very closely tied together, the changes in immigration with the civil rights movement. And so I think all of us, we owe a debt of gratitude to the people who fought for these rights. Absolutely. And the way that you repay those debts is by continuing to fight for them when they're being rolled back right now.
Absolutely. And I think that's what our role is right now in America as immigrants, as people of color, as minorities, that yes, we've never had to really fight for this before because we were never on the front lines back in the 60s, right? It was the civil rights movement. It was the black community fighting for their rights. And we owe it to them for where we are now. We have some of the best lives imaginable compared to, like if my family was still back in Pakistan, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think I'd be living in a room with triple monitors and a state-of-the-art computer doing a podcast, right? I don't believe that would have been possible for me. That's the beauty of America. Like, we have the opportunity here, and we need to fight for that, not just for us, but for the future generations, for, more people who want to come here, for anyone who wants to, make a better life. And I love America, and that's really why I keep fighting and why I'm so involved in the Democratic Party as a state executive. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's mind-numbingly annoying, but that's the price I pay. I guess that's my tax for a better future. Yeah,
I mean, and maybe I want to shift into the second area here, but part of it for me is also, when we talk about, Democratic Party or party politics and these kind of things, there's got to be bigger things. Okay.
There's one thing I want to always tell people about this. And this is a question I love asking people. Shri, how many political parties are there in the country?
Oh God, I don't know how many, man.
So I love asking this question because people think there's like, oh, there's a Republican Party and a Democratic Party. Some may think there's a Green Party, a Libertarian Party, and some independents. And usually people come to the conclusion about like five, right?
Yeah.
What most people don't know, every political party has a state chapter, and every state chapter has like a county chapter for each of the counties. I did the math. There are about 9,000 political parties in the country.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that a lot of them don't even agree with, their national or state chapters. Like, I'm in Fort Bend County, right? You ran here. Fort Bend County Democratic Party, arguably the most progressive county party in the state. Anything we could have ever wanted, we have here. All of our policies, all of our resolutions passed, like straight the most progressive political party in Texas. The Texas Democratic Party, also one of the most progressives in the country, I would argue. The National Party, far behind all of us. So if we're going to talk about political parties and how people feel and, what you hear on the news, I think a big problem is that people don't know that you can get involved. You won't obviously make it to the national party immediately, right? But your local parties, your state parties are probably ripe and open for change. And 90% of the time people get in just because nobody else is there running for these positions, which are intra-party positions and not like on a voting ballot you go to. These positions are elected at your conventions or within your local party. You just kind of show up and you can be part of the change. I think one thing I wish a lot of people would take away from this is that if you want to change a political party, whether it's the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Green Party, Libertarian Party, whichever, just get involved in your local area. And eventually, I think you can move up, in my case, rather quickly, and start bringing changes to the state and hopefully eventually the national level. And I wish people took more of an interest in representative democracy and actually participating in this. I don't think people do that enough. And, if you want to know how to do this, Sri and I, we're going to be making this a podcast. We're going to be talking about this. We may even put up a website about how to, do some of the things we're talking about on this podcast. So once our website is up, please do check us out. And hopefully we can get you some guidance on, making the country a better place.
Well, I'm glad you finished with that, making the country a better place, because I think most people's association with political parties, people who are, whether you identify as a Democrat or Republican or, one of the other parties, or whether you identify as an independent or you say, I don't care about politics, everybody seems to have a sort of negative association with politics. And I think that's because we think of it as, the political industry, the attack ads, and or whether we think of it as, corruption. We think of it as all the money, the lobbying in Washington, D.C. and not working for the people, et cetera, or you just feel disconnected from it. For a lot of folks, maybe it's the folks who like to watch basketball, but when you start talking about politics, they just feel like it doesn't affect them at all. Like what is all this stuff? They don't see any connection to their life. And I think that is a big difference between what at least the founding fathers, the people who participated, the few thousand people who got to vote in the first election in 1789 or in 1793, and the majority of the country today, is that you have to feel like you have a stake. You have to feel connected to this. My nephew, he's 6 years old, and he asked me last year, what is politics, Uncle Sri? And I said, well, politics is like, say, if some people in the class want to have bananas for lunch, other people want to have apples for lunch, you have to decide, you can't all have everything you want, and somehow the class has to come to a decision together. Politics is how we make collective decisions on things, right? And it could end up being that the biggest kid in class just punches everybody if he wants bananas, and we all just have bananas. But I think that most people in the world think that it's a better system, that we actually work these things out. Everybody gets a voice, and we have some sort of system of coming to these decisions. So, from that perspective, politics, or at least participation in democracy, civil society, I think is a much more positive word. That's something that we should instill in people from childhood, from, age 5, 6 years on in society. You don't have to be a politician, an elected official necessarily, in order to participate in your society and democracy. Having said that, we actually have more elected officials than any country in the world. I don't know how many total we have, something like 100,000 elected officials across the country. So there's a lot of different elected positions. Not all of them pay money, but
right, yeah.
but you can be elected. But whether you get elected, whether you are working with a party, or whether you're just doing civil society work in your community, you don't have to be part of a party to do work on the school board, for example, or work with the education system, right? Yes, you can volunteer. You can make your community better, and I think that's really what we're talking about here. Is are we making collective decisions that make our communities better, that help our families, that make it easier for us to get good education, good healthcare, good roads, like all of the things that people think about when they think about the economy and their take-home pay. That's also about collective decisions. So there's some things that it actually works a lot better if we all pool our resources. People rail on public schools sometimes, but man, imagine what it was like 150 years ago when there were no public schools. Most people in America did not go to school, not 12 or 6 years ago. They didn't go to 1 year of school 150 years ago. Right. So like the idea that we have public schools, the idea that we have public roads, that we sort of have public transportation, and for a lot of countries, the idea that you have public health care, those are things that bring us together as a society, and it separates us from feudal societies, from empires and things like that, where some people were slaves and other people were knights and lords and ladies. In a modern democratic society, we should all have that kind of opportunity, but that involves all of us participating in this to make decisions, not just a few people, especially not a few wealthy, powerful people getting to make all the decisions for all of us. Because if that's the situation, then I think that a lot of people are going to get stuck out. They're not going to be able to live those happy lives. Democracy is not there to protect the wealthy, and I think some people are. Some elected officials talk about democracy as if, it's here to protect this extremely wealthy person. No, the extremely wealthy people are protected in democracy. They're protected in monarchy. They're protected in almost any society in the world. They are the ones who make the decisions. The unique thing about democracy is that even if you're not extremely wealthy, you can still be protected, because we all have the collective power of our votes, and we have the power to come together and organize. That's what political parties should be about. They should be about organizing communities, about organizing larger groups within society to make change. And I think that's how we should look at politics. We should not look at it as the political industry and just the ads and those kind of things.
That's right. I think another problem people face is that, I know so many of my friends are working like 2 or 3 jobs now, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't really have time to volunteer and do something else aside from just survive. I actually don't know the answer to this, but maybe you do. What do you tell somebody like that? Like somebody who can't do beyond just working and paying their bills? Like that is such a common problem, especially now with all the prices going up because of what's happening, with Iran. Or sorry, that's not the right way to say it. What the president did to Iran, because I solely blame him for this. What do you tell somebody like that? Like, I need you to not just survive, but give me extra time and try and make the country better, even in your own small way. Like, I don't know the answer to this. I don't know what to tell people.
So first, I think we should put a pin in the Iran war until next podcast, because that's a whole nother topic. But you asked the question, what should someone do? And I could give you the answer, from an organizing perspective, et cetera. But I do want to relate this a little bit back to what I was saying earlier about the kind of second big area. So, I've done a lot of things very publicly, or at least, online, and, running for office, etc. But when my brother had his heart attack and passed away, I spent a lot of time. He had friends coming in from all over the country, very close friends, and he had a huge church community that he was part of. I didn't realize how generous my brother was with his time. Um, in the sense that one of his friends said, I knew something was wrong Friday morning because Silas would always text me every Friday morning. This is a friend who lives in Seattle, who hasn't lived anywhere near Silas for years and years, and at least 9 or 10 of his friends said that my brother would talk to them every single week, right? And I didn't have any idea. I mean, I knew I talked to my brother pretty regularly, and I was just thinking about that, how generous my brother was with his time, that he would check in regularly with his close friends, and I think this is part of what all of us are searching for in a way. I mean, definitely since the pandemic, people have been searching for community. In fact, this is the first time in our lifetimes that attendance in faith communities at churches and other faith groups has not gone down in the last 5 years.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah, since the pandemic. So we're looking for community. We're looking for connection. And one thing that I was really proud of about my brother was that he spent his time. He was very much against social media. He was not an online person. He didn't allow his kids to look at screens at all. But he spent a lot of time with people face to face, and with his church community. With other parents in the community around the school that my niece and nephew attend. And something that I was really admired about my brother was the way that he treated everybody. In fact, there was this thing that happened at the funeral where there was like 9 or 10 people who were arguing over who was Silas's best friend, and and then one of them, he spoke and said, I felt like Silas, other people saw me in black and white. Silas saw me in color, which I thought was a beautiful statement. But and he said, I felt really, really special until I saw the way that Si talked to a homeless person. And then I realized he just talks to everyone that way. And that's something that I've been trying to emulate. There's a lot of politicians who talk about the problem of homelessness, and whether it's that we're not putting enough money in here. I mean, I think one of the biggest things right now is just build more housing, right? If we build more housing, there would be less homelessness, right? Yeah. As a political solution. But there's also the human aspect. What do any of us do? Is assuming that we even are in a city in DC or San Francisco or New York, you will definitely run into homeless people. If you just drive to a gated community, you may never actually come face to face with a homeless person. But I used to think about this, when I would see the way that my brother would interact with somebody who's obviously, just physically look at them, they're in distress, like something has gone wrong in society. This person has to live on the street, and he would carry around food with him. He used to do this even in college. He would carry around food so he could hand out food to someone on the street. And I've tried to be better myself. In Austin a couple of years ago, someone was sitting on the street, and it was a cold day in January, and I asked him if he had a place to stay, and he said no. And I said, well, if a shelter would take you, would you go there? He said, like, yeah, I would. And so I said, all right, let me take you one. And so I drove around. I went to 3 different shelters in Austin, and all of them had waiting lists of more than a month to get in for a bed into the shelter. So it wasn't an issue of like, oh, this person just doesn't want a bed. They literally, there weren't enough beds physically. The other day, me and Alicia were we were walking down the street, just taking a walk, and we saw this man. He is about 70 years old. He looked like he was in some kind of distress, one shoe off, and he was sort of swaying back and forth. And so first we went up to him, asked if he needed anything. He said he could use some water, and we got him some water and some food. And then I tried to call the community, what's it called? CRT, community resource team, I think, maybe, who's supposed to respond to things like this. I tried to call them, and I called the homeless hotline as well. And they said, well, if he looks in distress like that, you should just call 911. So I said, okay. So I called 911, and they said they would send an ambulance out to check him out to see if he was physically okay, because his foot looked swollen. And I saw an ambulance pull up like about a block away. They sort of looked around a little bit. They didn't come to the right intersection, by the way, and then they drove away. I was just really frustrated because I've made 3 different phone calls. And if we walked away, if we just gave an intersection, that the person might not be at the same spot later. And so we ended up taking him to a day services place where you can sit inside, and then in the afternoon they have a bus that will take people to a shelter. But we had to drive him over there. It was really frustrating to me because this takes like several hours. I don't know how many people would just stop their day and take several hours to do this.
Right.
But
yeah.
We were trying our best to live generously. In fact, that was my brother's motto, is to live generously. And so we have these t-shirts for him. Right.
I love that.
And I've just been thinking about this constantly over the last couple of months, especially every day. How to be a better person, be a better citizen, but also just how do you live generously? What is the right thing to do in society if you want to be a good person every day? What is the right thing to do when you see a fellow human being in distress? How much do you put in? How much do you put into that versus how much do you put into political change to try and change the process? Do you help one person or do you fight to change a society? But if you're fighting to change society, how long do you put in? Because I would just say this: our present government is not looking out for people who are people who are not taken care of in society. They're not looking out for the downtrodden. They're looking out for the wealthy, very clearly, right? Mm-hmm. And do you fight? Is it like a Nelson Mandela where you have to be willing to fight for 25, 26 years or go to prison for 26 years and keep that faith alive, hoping that someday you can do good just by fighting that battle? I'm wrestling with this question. So when you ask me, what should an individual person do? I think I've got good answers about volunteering, about organizing, about participating, little bits of things that people can do. But the honest truth is I'm searching myself for meaning, how to be a good person, a better person to my family, a better person to my friends, a better person to my community, and a better person to my country every single day.
Yeah, I don't think there is an answer right now, which is the most frustrating thing. I think also even in politics, for example, a lot of people ask me that question too. What can I do to, change policy or change this elected official? And I don't think there's really a guide out there on how to actually change things. I think that's a project. I'm just going to drop it. That is a project I'm working on, and I will be sharing it with the world very soon. The whole point of this is to kind of take away from what's out there right now, social media and the traps that are there, and to try and make something that can give people an actual guide into changing, at least on the political side. I don't know about the world and how to change just, being better people. But at least I believe if people have the tools to do something, hopefully they'll use it and do something good with it.
Yeah, and I agree, and I don't think everybody has to go through a soul-searching moment every single morning when they wake up.
Your morning affirmations.
I will say this, I absolutely think money in politics is awful for our society. I absolutely think, lobbying distorts all of our laws and the rules that we live by. Having said that, I think a lesson I learned from running for Congress and from being involved in the political process is that it's actually the money doesn't actually buy what people think it buys, right?
Right.
And what I mean by this is that a lot of people think that money buys elections, right? Elon Musk drops $200 million, he buys an election, or this organization drops money on this campaign, they buy an election, right? But that's very easily disproven, and I'll probably talk about this repeatedly because it's a sore point for me. I can give you example after example. Who had more money, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? Who had more money, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, right?
And not
there's
individuals in their personal wealth. We're talking about their campaign committees.
Yeah. So whose campaign spent more money? That's what I mean, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we're talking the billions of dollars there, and then it happens on the congressional level, Senate level. I would give you tons and tons of examples where people spent ridiculous amounts of money, and they dropped it, and it didn't win an election. However, what the money does buy, because there's this perception that money buys elections, and so money buys elected officials. Because if an elected official thinks that they have to keep someone happy, otherwise they're going to lose their election because someone else is going to spend more money on them, which wasn't actually the reason that they won or lost the election in the first place. Most of the time, it's just being an incumbent, But your first election, a competitive election, it's not the money. I guarantee you, it's not the money that decides who wins the election. It's about the communities and the organizing. But if the politicians all think that money buys elections, then they will change their behavior, they will change their laws, and then eventually we get a distorted society, because they're only listening to the wealthy people who can drop the money, or they're scared of making the wealthy people upset. For me, money in politics is just another form of lobbying. It's like directly lobbying. It's giving money to a campaign versus paying money to a lobbyist who will go and help write the legislation in Washington. But it's all the same thing. It's buying influence with that elected official. If the elected officials realize that the money didn't actually buy the elections, then that might change things. And so if you're sitting out there saying, well, I don't have enough money to donate to a campaign, or, I don't have enough time, I'm too busy, right? Mm-hmm. To me, the way that we participate in society is not by anyone taking all this on their shoulders at once, right? It's not by somebody doing, dropping their work and just, doing what I did, like basically giving up.
What we did. We're crazy enough to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like giving up your income for years at a time so that you could run for office. It's about little bits of participation, right? A small chunk. Each one of us has 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week. And is there a small chunk that you can do? Is there a small way you can lend your voice? Is there something that you can write to share, to communicate to other people? Is there somewhere where you can show up for an hour or two, right? And do all those small bits, like drops of water. Do they come together? Because if you put together 1 million drops of water, you get a river, and eventually you get an ocean. It can wash away anything, right? And so I think that's the point, is thinking of your power in the collective, thinking about your power in community, and your connections and your relationships, not thinking about your power in terms of, oh, I'm too small, I can't make a difference here. I think that's just the wrong way to look at it. And even the wealthy people, they maybe have some more influence because they know this politician, but your community has a lot more power than somebody who drops a bunch of money on an election. I guarantee you that.
You know what's fascinating? That actually brought a very important thing into my mind. I think one thing a lot of people struggle with nowadays is asking for help.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us are proud. Like, I am a very proud guy, right? I struggle with this. I don't ask for help when I need it. Whether it's for a personal problem, whether it's life, whether it's something in politics, right? I don't always ask for help. And I think that's one of my biggest failures, because as a community, they don't know what I need or how to do something, right? If I don't ask for help, I am not only doing myself a disservice, but I feel like I'm doing everybody a disservice now. And I'm trying to get better about that and asking, like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing, whether it's something as small as writing a letter to my city hall, whether it's a resolution in the state party. And I've been always focused on trying to do it myself, to be like, yo, I'm self-sufficient, I'm the guy you can rely on, I'm the person you can trust to get this job done. But I lose sight that I live in a country of 400 million people, or 300 million, whatever it is, right? And I can't do it alone. And I don't think anybody can really do it alone, whether it's something as small as fixing a pothole. Maybe you can do it alone, right? Maybe you can reach out to City Hall and they'll respond and get it done. But then maybe you can't. Maybe you live in a city that just unfortunately is underfunded, and they have a telephone line that just goes somewhere, but they haven't hired somebody to answer that line, and your complaint doesn't go anywhere. I think the one thing we can do better as a society and for community is to talk to other people and do our best to ask for help. And collectively, as more and more people ask for help and do things, right? I think that can also bring change, because if I were to ask people to help, right, let's say I want to take on this issue that I'm personally having in North Texas, in the Dallas area. A friend of mine, she's a principal. She got reassigned because of her faith and some of the things she posted online.
Wow.
Yeah, that's reality. I can't fix that, right? I can't just walk into a school board meeting and be like, yo, put her back as principal. She earned it, right? Because the other side right now, they have hundreds of people saying she shouldn't be here. I think on our side, like on, the leftish side of the aisle, we struggle with asking for help. And I think if we do a better job of that, then I think we can bring a lot more change in the world. And just, that's by extensions, just really talking to people. You brought up that over the past 10 years, the Supreme Court has making some very interesting decisions and our country's going downhill, right? Well, 10 years ago, what really happened? That was when we first learned about the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And that groundwork was put in around 2013 with the way Facebook had their Graph API in search, where so much data was available to people that people with enough resources could pull all of it in and, play psychological tricks and get to where we are now. I think the best inoculation for that, because all these attacks are coming. I mean, we see it all the time on TV. So-and-so is coming for you. Our way of life is gone and blah, 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 right? These are psychological tricks they play to scare you, to put you in this constant place of fear and stress that if I don't do this thing that, so-and-so is saying, that I'm going to lose everything. But I think we end up in echo chambers because of it. And I think we need to do a better job of communicating and talking to others, not just in our own echo chambers, but everywhere. And the more experience we have with that, I think then people will really start to see that, hey, the world isn't as scary as they may make it to seem to be. Just communication, talking, and asking for help, which I think is one of the biggest things I'm feeling at least.
That's a really great point that you make, that asking for help is really tough for a lot of people. And I think it's gotten tougher as our communities have started to wither a little bit, right? I think it's a lot easier to ask for help from someone from your church or your mosque or your temple, or someone that you see regularly face to face than if you haven't talked to somebody in a year or two or longer, because just distance and the way that modern society is. People would always ask me about the campaign. You raised so much money. How did you raise all this money? You raised millions of dollars for your campaign. And at the time I thought, obviously I had a different perception. It really was about, getting all this money, and that's how you win elections, blah, blah, blah. But what I was really doing in that was I was practicing asking for help from first tens and hundreds and thousands and eventually tens of thousands of people. I asked for help from all these people. And the surprising thing to me was that people wanted to give that help. Everybody says they don't have time for this, they don't have time for that. But when you actually make that ask, you'd be surprised at how many people there are around willing to give you that help, but you just didn't know to make the ask, or you didn't know how to make the ask. And this applies to politics, but it applies to personal relationships, applies to mental health. That's something
Right.
I want to talk a lot about in this podcast is, we have a huge mental health crisis, in our society, maybe in humanity across the world. I don't know if there's a country that's doing super well with mental health. And a lot of it is just, our brains and our bodies trying to adapt to this modern world. I think, these relationships online, connecting with people across the country and across the world, it can be really cool. It can be really powerful, but we see the downside of it right now. And I think we have to be able to, at least within some circle, have those in real life, face-to-face relationships and connections, and have community around us first, and then we can use these online communities and technology to connect us to larger and larger communities in a way that they couldn't back 250 years ago. I mean, one of the reasons we have an electoral college that meets separately in the States is because they thought it would take too long to send somebody all the way to Washington and come back. It's like, man, it'll take a whole month to do this.
Back then it did take months back then.
Exactly. And so nowadays we can communicate with people all over the world, but what are we communicating? Are we actually building relationships? And going back to my brother again, I was just really impressed with how he had all these in real life relationships. Like at his funeral, I think almost 500 people showed up at his funeral, and I was just amazed. These real face-to-face connections and community, that's what people are searching for. And to me, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about politics, whether we're talking about our family life, whether we're talking about our social life. I mean, community is at the heart of everything. If we have stronger communities, we can live better lives. We can be happier people. Even with less money, you can be happier if you have a stronger community. On the flip side, even people who have more per capita income, right? They have all these economic measures that America is doing better economically, et cetera, than it was 10, 20 years ago. But I think the thing that people are missing is that if they don't feel a strong community, if they don't feel it in their life, right, then all the economic pressures seem to add up. They hit a lot harder when you don't have relationships and community to rely on. Does that match your experience?
I think so too. Yeah. I think I found, like, whenever people ask me for help, and I don't know if this is like a me problem or maybe it's not a problem, but when anybody has ever asked for help, I kind of just like want to drop everything and do everything I can to help them. That could just be me. I don't know. But I think helping people is part of what makes us human too, right? I don't know any other creature that does that. And I think,
I've seen a lot of animals do really cool things to help each other, but I think the difference between humans today and humans, maybe a couple thousand years ago, is that we have learned to cooperate better and not just kill each other all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
But what I was getting at is, like, we made a choice, right? Like, we didn't just do it out of instinct. It's always a choice for us, right? I think that's what makes us different than, obviously, a whole bunch of other reasons why we're different than animals or humans back then, is that there are choices we can make. And maybe just being intentional about the choices we make can bring change in a more positive way and, help us seek a better future. See what I did there? Drop the name of the podcast.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking about it all the time, man. Like, and every single interaction, my interaction with my mom, with my siblings, my niece, my nephew, friends, my interaction with the people I know professionally, old friends, new friends, people, or just bumping into somebody on the street or a homeless person. How can I be a better person here? How can I listen better? How can I be more supportive? How can I actually do some good for this person and for all of humanity?
Yeah.
Hoping we find some answers.
Hoping we find answers. I don't know. Maybe, as this podcast grows and more people listen to it, we can probably have like some social media channels. Maybe people can give us some advice. Maybe they can answer, drop a comment, let us know.
I do want to put in a little time for some fun stuff here at the end.
Of course,
of this podcast, right? So maybe first fun thing, because like I said, it's the last week. Well, maybe a little bit more depending on how many games there are.
It's not looking like it's gonna be more than a week, but
yeah. So have you been watching the playoffs?
I have been watching the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts right now as we head? Game 3 is coming up tonight.
So I know you and I kind of just jokingly texted about this, and I was like, Spurs in 7 for the script.
There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there online, by the way, about what the league is doing. I saw a video from the Western Conference Finals where I think Dylan Harper came out, and a trainer took him back into the locker room just before he hit his line for that day for betting. So who knows, right?
That's
Who knows,
crazy.
Right? But
they injected him with something that just like disappears from the system.
Assuming that there isn't a script necessarily that the NBA is forcing everybody to, what do you think about the Spurs and the Knicks? What do you think about the NBA playoffs so far?
Oh, geez, man. Like, the Knicks are on fire.
Yeah.
They're not just winning. They're winning by margins right now, and that's scary.
So here's a crazy thing. So I think any basketball fans might already know that the Knicks, and by the way, I'm Texas, 100%. And,
we're Rockets fans.
Rockets. Yeah, we're Rockets fans for life. Once the Rockets were out, Spurs were definitely my team. I'm supporting Texas all the way through. But my brother and my sister and many friends and loved ones in New York. I was in New York when they were in the conference finals, when they came back from 22 points down with 7.5 minutes left in the game.
Which is insane.
To beat the Cavs. And the bar we were in was just going nuts. New York is in a frenzy right now, and I'm happy for them. I think the Knicks are a great team. I actually saw something, because obviously the Spurs have had these 3 amazing draft picks in a row, Wemby and then Stephon Castle, 2 rookie of the year. Dylan Harper probably could have been rookie of the year if he had been on a worse team, to be honest. It's because the San Antonio Spurs just jumped through the stratosphere this year. Yeah. Everybody thought like, okay, they're not going to be a lottery team this year. They'll get in the playoffs, but maybe be, kind of a little bit above 500 or something. They end up with the second best record in the league. Nobody expected that. So Dylan Harper could have been a rookie of the year somewhere else too, right? But these are good draft picks. Well done. The organization San Antonio, top to bottom, I think is the best organization in basketball in my lifetime, probably, like with Popovich, at the top, and just the way they do things is really good. Having said that, there's this cool storyline with the Knicks that they have 3 teammates who won the championship actually in San Antonio, bizarrely, at Villanova. And now they're all 3 of those teammates who were friends since college, and even roommates, and 2 of them were roommates in college. They could be end up winning an NBA Finals together. And I saw somebody put up a meme that says, friendship beats draft picks.
I love that. The power of friendship.
Yeah, and Dante DiVincenzo, who is also part of that team, he's kind of sad now because he's not on the Knicks.
He's the only one not there.
Yeah, he's with the Timberwolves, recovering from injury right now. But there's a lot of cool storylines this year. Obviously, Wemby's done things that nobody else. There was a game in the Western Conference Finals. I think it was Game 1. He scored 41 points, 24 rebounds with 3 blocks. You know how many other people in NBA history have ever done that?
I'm gonna go off on a limb and say maybe 2.
One person.
Yeah, right. Like some insane stat like that.
One person. Well, that person did it twice. He did it in 87 and 88. His name was Hakeem Olajuwon.
Right. Yeah.
He's the only person in NBA history who's ever done. So Wemby's doing amazing things. I mean, he probably will be the best defensive player of all time when all is said and done. But the Knicks, like their storyline of winning 13 games in a row. Which the only team, the only team that's won more than 13 games in a row in the playoffs?
No. I'm going to guess
that was
the Golden State Warriors.
Yes. Do you know which year?
I don't know which year, but I would assume it had to be something with like Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Durant, Draymond Green, something in that era. Yeah.
This was after KD joined the Warriors. So they'd been 73-9 the year before, and then lost to the Cavs, lost to LeBron after he came back from a 3-1 deficit, first time in NBA Finals history.
That's right.
So then they picked up KD that year, and in the playoffs that year, they went They won their first 14 games straight without losing at all. They were 3-0 in the finals, and LeBron won one game against them. So they went.
Ruin the streak.
They went 15-1 in the playoffs. So that's the only team that's done better than these New York Knicks in the playoffs. But probably even more impressive, is that they have, I'm pretty sure up until this last game, which they won by 1 point, it was really dramatic finish, by the way, if you didn't see it. Well, I mean, the Spurs came back from 14 points down in the last couple minutes of the game, and then they tied up the game with 20 seconds left, and they had the rebound. The ball was in their hands. They could have held it for the last shot, and Wemby accidentally throws it into Stephon Castle's back as he's turned. He wasn't looking at him, and they end up losing the game by 1 point. But before that, I think in the Knicks 12-game win streak, every single game they had won by double digits. And if you average across those 12 games, they were winning by more than 20 points per game. That even the Warriors didn't do that. I mean, it's a pretty crazy run, and I don't think playoffs or regular season, any team had ever won that many games in a row by that many points in NBA history. Since
we have to fact check that one. That's a crazy stat.
So the Knicks have a good storyline too. But I think for basketball fans, it would definitely be good if the series went longer. For Texas fans, I think we have definitely not seen Wemby. I mean, Wemby's, if you look at his stat lines, they look, pretty good, but if you look at the play, I honestly think Cat might have outplayed Wemby in the first two games. So I don't think we've seen the best from Wemby. I think that comeback that they made in the last few minutes of the fourth quarter was the best they played in the last two games. Hopefully that gives them some sort of emotional momentum, because some people have said, "Oh, no team has ever." First of all, teams have come back from down 0-2 in the finals, but never after losing the first two games at home in the finals.
Right.
And actually, one of those teams that lost the first two games at home in the finals, eerie parallels, was the Orlando Magic in 1995 against the Rockets. They lost the first two games in the finals at home and then end up getting swept. They had a star center who'd been the number one draft pick in his third season. They had a star guard who was also a number one pick come up, and then they had a veteran guard come in. So very eerie parallels. The Orlando Magic, they were in the finals much earlier than they should have been, and then they got swept. So eerie parallel there. Having said that, I also remember the Rockets having lost 2 games at home back in 1994 against the Suns. And I remember the headline of the Houston Chronicle the next day was Choke City. I don't know how old you were at that time, but
I was 4 years old in 95.
Okay.
Actually, no, maybe 3, because my birthday's in December.
You were not reading the Houston Chronicle, but
I was not reading the Houston Chronicle at the time.
It was very painful. It was very painful to read a headline that called the entire city Choke City, because it was true. The Astros had choked. The Oilers had choked. The Oilers were up 35-3 in the playoffs, and they lost in overtime against the Buffalo Bills. And then to see the Rockets choke these 2 games back to back at home, both of them had huge leads. The second game, we were up by 20 points in the fourth quarter, and we choked. And then, you know what happened? We went on the road. We went to Phoenix, and we won 2 games against Charles Barkley. He was with the Suns at that time. Came back home, finished out that series, and then went on to win the finals against the Knicks in 7 games in 1994. So I think the Spurs can still do it. I believe in Spurs. It's going to be a good game tonight. It's going to be a good game.
It's going to be a great game tonight. Other storylines, like, I don't know if you've seen like the pop culture stuff going on around this event. Like, there's a wrestler who cursed the Knicks like 10 years ago or something. And this is the crazy storyline, right? And they were saying, okay, this guy cursed him, and then this is the year he took the curse off, and suddenly the Knicks just started winning 13 in a row.
Wow. I mean,
you never know, man.
There may be something to that. Also, one other thing, we have the Ted Cruz curse in Texas, right?
Yeah, and we have...
Texas fans know that whenever Ted Cruz shows up to any sporting event, your team is probably going to lose.
That's right.
Well, guess who's planning to show up to Madison Square Garden tonight?
I wonder, is it our president?
Yeah. So as much as like I like the Knicks, as individuals, if Donald Trump shows up, let's see if he also curses the team or not.
I'm gonna be so mad if he doesn't, because like that just proves Ted Cruz alone is the curse and not just Republicans. But we'll see how that goes.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't know how his UFC fight at the White House is going. So maybe he's trying to jump ship like his Iran war and move over to basketball. But that's a good cliffhanger, I think, for next week.
I think that's a great cliffhanger. Thank you, man. This is a great podcast. And to all the people who are listening for the first time, let us know what you think. We will be having our website, social media stuff going up this week. If you're listening to this on, a podcast app, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, whichever, drop a comment. Let us know. We would love the advice on how to be better people, and if you think that the Knicks are actually going to win it all, or if the Spurs are going to come back. Thank you so much, and until next time, let's get out of here, Shree.
All right, until next time.
Take care.